Good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for December 8th of 2025. We hope you will enjoy this enlightening evening. Here we go. We are going to start with item number 1, audience communications. At this time, we have no blue slips. So that's nice. We're going to go ahead and move on to item number 2, the Committee of the Whole, and that would be my committee. And this evening, we do not have anything on the agenda. So that's correct. So we will move on. We're going to move on all the way to item 3 right away, and we're going to start with the Operations Committee, and I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Burton.
Thank you,
Mrs. Burton.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. First item on our agenda this evening is item 3A, the purchase of LMC Furniture 2026, and we'll hear from Mr. Green.
Wow, you are all very fast tonight.
Yes, we were prompt, weren't we?
To get up here. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
It's great to be here with you this evening. I have Mr. Weber from Plant Moran Real Point joining me for a few items.
Good evening.
We'll call Amy up from French in a few minutes as well. So we have several items that we had a chance to review last week at our study session. And this evening's, you'll see from the packet, we have, you approved our construction projects last month. And this purpose of this request this evening as it regards to LMC Furniture is to get ahead of schedule on ordering select furniture items for our 2026 summer bond schools, Niji Media Center, and Webster, and a few pieces of storage for their idea factories. We will come to you later, I believe it's February, Brian, where we'll come with the whole LMC furniture package.
That is correct.
That is correct, okay. But for the bulk of our orders. But these items, we wanted to get ahead of time and get a good lead time on, because we've learned from previous bonds that the items that you'll see in your packet this evening were delayed in previous years, and they weren't syncing up with our opening of our media center. So we wanted to make sure we put this order in front of you this evening, which is usually those end cases, some circulation desks, some storage areas in the idea factories, and I think that's the majority of the items that you'll see on there. And then that'll help us to ensure delivery is on time. We do not need to store these items. Those are stored free of charge from the company, but we want to get ahead of that, and that's why we bring it to you this evening. And those are for furniture purchases over at Niji and at Webster.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments on these items? All righty. And you said that the company will store them for us, so even if they're ready ahead of time,
That is
they'll just
correct.
deliver when
Yes.
when we're ready for them.
That is correct. We've had challenges getting them on time, so they've agreed to release. If we release these now, if they do get ahead of schedule, that's fine,
Okay,
but they're not going to
good.
charge us for that.
Good.
Yep.
Terrific.
And just to clarify, we are still designing some of the other furniture pieces, colors, and all that other design stuff. That'll coincide with this. These are all standard colors that'll plug and play with anything that we select the finishes on. So,
Okay.
And it ties back to previous years. We've had a standard throughout each year. This coincides with those designs as well. So,
Okay, so these are the standard pieces, and then the accent colors that
Yes.
we can choose and deal with later.
Yep, there's still meetings ongoing. We're finalizing those decisions, and that's why that'll be after the first of the year.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All righty, can we get this on the agenda for a vote next week? Next item is 3B, our 3D renderings for the summer 2026 media centers.
All right. Well, welcome to
yeah.
Amy
Amy,
Ninkart
join
from
us.
French Associates, who will be highlighting the 3D renderings for the board this evening for our 2026 schools that we just mentioned in the previous item. We're excited first of all, as you know, we go through a process for these drawings, and we make sure that I don't have any decision in color scheme, and we outsource that to the elementary or secondary director or Ms. Oquist. But we're very happy with the design look of Niji and Webster Media Centers. They have unique configurations. Webster is very similar in many ways to Coolidge from a few years ago. Niji quite different altogether. So Amy's here from French Associates, who will be leading us through a visual tour this evening. So welcome, Amy.
Thanks everyone for having me back. Excited to show you some visuals for those spaces that we talked about 2 months ago. 2 things to note. Brian mentioned that furniture has not been fully selected, so take it with a grain of salt. We laid out typical pieces in these renderings so you could get a feel for the space, but these pieces will be selected by each individual school as their needs fit, and then as well as colors. So our interior designers working with Andrea and Bill on the color schemes, so some of the colors might change during that process. All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, so we're going to start with Niji Arrow. If we go to the next slide, there's a play button at the bottom. All right, so this is you enter from the front vestibule. So you're going to head in. The carpet in the corridor is going to be replaced with LVT. We're going to add a low wall to bring it focus to the entry. This side will be focused on the books. So this is where the students will select their books and use any technology if needed to do research. And the configuration of the space remains pretty similar to how it is now. That's the office to the left. And then you're heading through like a low spot, which is there's a penthouse above. And then there's these acoustical sliding partitions that can divide the space as we enter the flex space. So this is the flex space where you can expand or contract that space as needed, close it off if there's a group meeting outside of the LMC specialist. And then we just kind of turn the corner here. We're going to head towards the Idea Factory down the hallway. So that carpet that's there now, the LVT will wrap all the way around that kind of that central core to kind of bring everything together and unify the space. We've got some small little peekaboo windows into the Idea Factory. So we're going to kind of flip around here. This used to be a workroom. And it was now expanded to be the Idea Factory. So it's a pretty long space, but will be great for doing projects with the students. And the footprint remained the same. We just removed a dividing wall. So as you enter this space, we come with the same elements that we've typically had. We've got these little pop-out ceilings with the unique lights. This one used to have a sink in the space, so they got a sink with some casework. They'll have a teaching wall, so they can formally teach in that space with Project Lead the Way if needed. And then this is the wall where we have the casework we were talking about that goes on a track. They can swap out as needed, so it's very flexible for whatever the program needs. Same thing on this side, we have the little peekaboo windows to engage students as they walk by. Otherwise, the corner kind of remained the same. We're going to head out. We're going to head back into the LMC. So we're down the hallway now. Very similar. We've got some feature walls where there used to be glazed block. They're going to do a tactile surface on there to bring it up to current modern colors and finishes. This is another view. We've got these upper clear story lights. I don't think those were accepted. So those we'll just have that acoustical panel instead. Due to cost, those were not accepted. And then we just saw the acoustical wall slides open, so that can help with that privacy for this space. And for Niji, we try to stick with like a naturey feel with the colors, the tones, earthy, and then also bring in those Japanese elements too. So you'll see those as we kind of head out here back into the book space. You'll see the lanterns and the cranes to kind of reflect that.
Oh, nice.
And then that cutouts and the pop downs reflect the origami crane, as well as just provide some interest in that space. The acoustical ceiling will help with acoustics because that will be the book area and also the sit down area for reading over in that corner.
So when you look at Niji, again, I wanted to thank Amy and Ms. Keats, the staff at Niji that were part of those walkthroughs, Ms. Oquist. Right now, the bookcases are kind of the border for the library at Niji if you visit there, and the carpet kind of just goes all the way from the library into the offices in the classrooms. And so really, Emily, if you could just pause it for a second before we move on to the next school, really that flooring that was put in there around the perimeter to differentiate from the carpet was a really key move. And also another big decision was where the learning lab is in the library is on the opposite wall is the Idea Factory. So really identifying the teaching wall for the Idea Factory being on the other wall, because this is an open school concept. So that'll be some of the things we'll talk about as we get through the bond with some of the unique challenges of shutting down this library and how that'll look a little different. But overall, the design elements are pretty fantastic, and the bookshelves seem more logical now, not as a border, like framing in the library, but more of a natural place for kids to browse. And then having that learning lab is going to be great for Niji Eero because they can have staff meetings there and do a lot of other things that they currently can't do. So thank you.
And I want to just mention, Bill, thanks for pointing that out. I thought a couple of the things that Amy did, and again, that that area in the corner there really does provide a nice visual when you walk in, as opposed to either having no barrier or having a full wall, which isn't possible. To have something that clearly says you're entering a separate space, and as you're walking around, be respectful of that space. The other thing that we were really having a challenge with, and I appreciated the idea to put this flooring around the perimeter, is that the classroom had one carpet, the hallway had a coordinating but different carpet, and it was going to have to impact what was chosen for the library. And it was, as Amy knows, our feedback was, that can't be possible. So we can't have 3 separate carpets, even if they're coordinating, so to speak. And so this, when you came up with this, I just thought it was a great solution because it's complementary what's in the classroom. You still see it, and you certainly see what's in the library, but having that break that is consistent all the way throughout, it looks more intentional.
Yes.
And it would have not looked intentional. And I think a few years from now, people might have said, who thought this was a good idea? And so, to me, those couple of things, they might seem like small design elements, but I think it really sets off the space. And then to have the cranes and the lanterns, which is certainly a nod to the culture and some of the cultural elements of Niji Eero, just all of those things go together really, really nicely.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes, so the flooring is like a giant square, right? It will go around the entire perimeter of that area. Oh, I like that. But will it go down the hallways, each hallway then?
There's walk-off carpet that comes in on each end, so you won't see that old carpet that's there now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. Is that the color of the floor?
Yes.
I like
Yep.
that.
And that's what I was gonna, I like that.
Yeah, it
I
was
like
supposed to
that
go with
color.
that natural earthy tones and kind of lighten the space up, because
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah,
dark
great.
right now.
Yep.
Yep.
It's got to be able to keep it cleaner too. Because in a
Yes.
hallway, to have carpeting in a hallway would be challenging.
It
to keep
is.
clean.
It is, yeah.
I like it.
Um, Amy, I have one question for
Yes.
you. What I think we're talking about is the learning lab that has, looks like more traditional rows of tables, all
Yes.
kind of pointed in one direction.
Yeah.
That's kind of a break from what I've seen in terms of a lot of the flexible furniture. Is that able to be, is that going to be rather stationary, or are we able to move that around if need
Yes.
be? Or
Yep.
can you tell me more about how that room is going to work?
Yeah, so those are all tables that can slide around and collapse, flip
Okay.
up, so then you can stack them together. The chairs stack together as well,
Okay.
so they can move around as needed.
It's really a flexible area that
Yeah.
staff have used in our other areas.
We've called it flex
Yeah.
classroom.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think the term tonight used was learning lab, but it
Yeah.
really is the same thing as a flex classroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty, good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item?
We got to see Webster now.
Yeah.
All righty.
Let's see Webster, all right.
Yes,
Here we
next
go.
slide, yep.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay, we're gonna enter Webster and from the hallway into that corridor. Right now, the footprint as it stands stays the same. The entry area will be a tactile wall covering, and then the existing doors remain there. As we turn into the space, we're gonna look at the book area. We've got some elements, we're going pretty fast here. We'll head into the office. That went way faster than Nijiro did. In the office, we got lots of storage because they're going to use this for both the office and the workroom. So all that storage can be for books, and then a good work surface for the LMC specialist. So this office, because how large it was able to be dual use for that workroom and the office. And then we'll head back out into the LMC. So you'll see on the wall, because this space had a big upper portion that was just drywall, we added some acoustical clouds. So they provide some intrigue, but also they're acoustical since we don't have an actual traditional drop ceiling. And then the ACT ceiling that you see is kind of leaf shaped, so we're bringing in natural feeling. Because this is a unique building that has 2 uses to it, we've felt the calming effects would be great for both student uses, bringing that organic feeling and a natural calming effect. We have a space that was dedicated to soft seating, very flexible, all that movable furniture. And then this is currently a classroom that isn't used as a classroom. We're turning that into the idea factory. So same elements there with the drop ceilings, the shapes. This one also was able to get a sink because there is a sink in there. And then there's 2 existing toilet rooms. That's what you see those doors leading into. And we'll head back out into the LMC. And then this view, you'll see the lights here are acoustical as well, since we don't have a drop ceiling, any of those linear lights. They have baffles around them to help with acoustics, create a more soothing environment for the students. The center space, similar to Coolidge, will be used for the sit-down area. And then on the other side over here, which is currently used as a bunch of offices, this will be turned into the learning lab, or flex space as we're calling it. So these are the similar tables that we've had in all the other media centers that can flip up, store, and stack as needed. There's also some additional storage in here and a sink, because we used to have a sink in there. So that was a nice feature they could add to make that room really flexible for whatever is needed, with a traditional teaching wall as well. So really the footprint at Webster stayed the same, but we utilized the spaces differently to get the functions of the program for the building, and still fit within, getting the idea factory, the flex space, the book area, the reading area, and providing storage as well.
Yeah, and the thing about Webster, if you think about,
Can you let her talk about, this
Oh,
is the
yes.
area that has a ton of color and a ton of.
absolutely, yes.
Yes, right now, this is kind of the tunnel of color. And so we're removing, those are like old tack boards. So we're gonna put up a tactile wall covering that will be pre-finished. So it's durable, but also kind of fun, brings that nature-y feel into the space.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that'll
Yeah.
upgrade that.
That'll be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you think of all of our schools that you've seen over this cycle of bond work in our media centers, you obviously can tell that all of our buildings were designed a little differently. And so you might be thinking Roosevelt and Coolidge when you see Webster, Niji Eros. So what you didn't see in either one of those libraries was the portable glass wall, because it just doesn't work in those designs due to the firewall issue over at Coolidge, and Niji Eero being in the open space. But I appreciate just the inventiveness and the creativity of your team, Amy, and our teams here that push back, have you go out again, have you meet with people again, and talk through those different nuances of these projects, because they're not just cookie cutter. You can see there's a lot of thought and care that go into each building and each design, so thank you.
Comments or questions on this building, or either building?
Great.
They look wonderful. Yeah, they look
do.
really great.
That's exciting, yeah.
Yeah, we're excited to see them come to fruition, and can't wait to walk them in the fall.
That'll be great. Thanks for being so responsive and making lots of visits out there.
Thank you.
Alrighty, and can we, now this is an item that we're gonna be voting on next week also, correct? Or just,
Sorry.
Jean,
just heads-
starting in, is it anything that we need?
No, this
We're all
was just
set.
a follow-up of,
Okay.
this is what was approved last month, this is the work, this is the end result.
Okay,
That
alrighty,
someday will be reality.
sounds good. Alrighty, any other questions or comments?
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
being
much.
here.
Thank you, Amy.
Alrighty, the next item on our agenda is 3C, the quarterly dashboard for the third quarter.
All right, it's a time for another quarterly dashboard. Mr. Francis told me that of all the items I'm going to bring throughout the year, the quarterly dashboard brings one of the most exciting responses from the Board of Education, because I know it's really important work. It's a chance for us to take a look at our bond progress, and for Mr. Weber to articulate where we are with meeting those benchmarks along the way. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Weber, who's going to give you an update that'll build upon our last one that we had just a few months ago.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Green. So, thank you for having us again to go through. Standard template we've used every year, every quarter, so we try and keep things standardized so everybody understands where we're at. Starting in the top left, our bond program goals and objectives. These are all the North Star, you can call it, that we've always focused on. These don't change, going back to 2021 of making sure that we keep our eye on the main goals and objectives of the program. Moving over to the cost summary. This is a snapshot. We actually, working with LPS's finance department, we have costs through the end of November here, so this is pretty current data. So walking through each category, our current budget is for each category going down the left-hand side. Current contracts, column B, and purchase orders, these are anything that's been signed and fully executed, so it is a commitment to the bond program. Actuals paid are the dollars against those contracts and purchase orders for column C. Column D is the remaining cost to complete, so that's just math of actuals, what's remaining, not actual paid on those commitments. Column E is the forecasted contracts and purchase orders, so this is money that is not yet under contract, but we are looking ahead at understanding there's still work to be completed. And then our last two is our unallocated reserve. So this would be any additional funding that is left out there that is not being forecasted. Right now, we're being conservative and leaving that at a $0 right now. And then our last column is our forecasted over/under. This is just letting us know if we have any trouble on any line item. Good news is right now, obviously, you're seeing zeros all the way down, so we're in good shape right now. A little bit of high-level perspective on this. The overall, at the bottom of the current budget, column A, it was a $186 million bond program. The good news is that the 191 is the difference, is $5.1 million of earned interest that has accumulated over the years on the bond. We've been tracking that conservatively with Mrs. Smith in the finance department to understand when those dollars can be accessible and deployed, watching those throughout, and those have been successfully put into all the packages that have been out there to date. So very good news on that from a standpoint from the markets in good interest rates, allowing us to capture those dollars. And then the other big one is, this is, I don't know, the 20th time you've seen me up here. We were at about 90% of the bond program is now under contract. So that includes the package that was approved last month with those trade contractors. And you can kind of capture that in column E of the forecasted. The one item under, if you follow construction all the way across, that $8.7 million, that was the amount that was approved last month. It's just not fully executed in our system yet, so that'll move over as soon as all those contracts are signed. So you're looking at, minus that, about $20 million left. Looking forward to the next couple of years, the heavy load of that is the technology, working with Mr. Clan's department of, there's money in there for technology to voice refreshes. There's other systems that are currently in design or plan to go out for bid, but that's the bulk of the dollars remaining in the program. Moving down, sticking with the finance for the cash flow, this is essentially just a snapshot of the bank account. We had 3 series in the program to accumulate those dollars. Once again, starting at the top right-hand side of that is the $186 million, your $5.2 million of earned interest, showing the actuals paid, and then that last line at the bottom right, current funds available, is $36.5 million. So essentially, that's what's sitting in the account right now, available to spend. So good news on the cash flow standpoint as well. Any questions on a finance perspective before I jump into the critical items and program phasing? Alrighty.
Comments or questions?
Alright. So overall, critical items, obviously we're still working through any changes in the market. You obviously saw a package earlier with furniture. We're still tracking lead times and availability. We want to be cognizant of that. As soon as the award of contracts happened last month, we immediately started identifying long lead items for HVAC equipment, electrical equipment. All that's in queue right now and moving right now. So that's the focus of the team right now, is to focus on those submittals and packages to get approved all that equipment that we need now. It's been the priority for the team. Still working through remaining classroom air conditioning issues. There will be work on 8 to 10 or 10 to 12 classrooms this Christmas break. We did resolve a bulk of the air conditioning issues. There were minor rooms that were found, minor leaks. That work is happening over Christmas, and then leading into spring break and into the warmer temperatures. Those will be addressed and ready to go for the next schooling season, so it's not impacting the classroom operations. And then focusing on closing out last summer's work, 2025. A lot of good work has been done on the punch list items. A small percentage does remain that we're planning for Christmas break to get back in those areas, once again, not to disturb classes, and wrap up that project as well for the last fall and summer. And then once again, focusing on those procurement of next summer's work is another critical item. Snapshot of the phasing. So phase 4 was our 2025, and then looking ahead to phase 5 for 2026 renovations is what you just saw for Nijit Euro. Garfield, and then, I'm sorry, Webster, and then we also have Garfield, which is the award packet from last month. Overall, things are going well. It's been a long road of good news, bad news, and here we are at the last phase of it, but holistically, it's been a very successful program. We're looking to finish strong. We know we can't take our eye off the goal here. There's challenges with those 3 projects next summer, individual based on the building and logistics, so we're not done yet, and we'll try and finish this thing as strong as possible.
But before there's questions, a few things, I know you know this because we've been through this a while, but folks that aren't familiar with this process, in the day-to-day, while you're not involved in that, we're meeting every other week with Amy's team, our construction team, Brian, our internal maintenance and grounds folks, and we're reviewing everything that you just heard in microscopic detail from what's happening here, there, and everywhere else. And then we also then meet with the superintendent to provide updates, and our team, internal team, to make sure if there's any benchmarks we're not meeting. So while you see this as a nice summary, like a satellite view, this is ongoing work all the time. And then as Brian stated, he's then sitting down with finance and making sure that his books are matching our books and all of those things to really bring this whole complete picture in front of you. So it's nice in this format, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of day-to-day, a lot of email, a lot of this and that. So thank you.
No, that's good perspective.
All right. Comments, questions? Mrs. Frank?
Just on the 2025 renovations, do we still have I'm sure that we do still
We
have
do.
things that are still working through. Is that going well with finalizing all of those?
It
or-
is, yes. There's some items that have to be repaired that there's just replacing or reordering parts and pieces. It just takes time to get their hand on it. But no, the crews have been working off hours to address as much as possible. I would say we're 90-some% complete with it. Obviously, with the LMC at Churchill finishing a little bit later, there's still a little bit more items there, but we are constantly talking about it and prepping to try and wrap this up over Christmas break, if not before. But there inevitably will be work going on there. It's been consistent with previous phases. But no, that is an absolute topic of discussion, is to close out those lingering items so we can focus on 2026 solely and get some of the stuff off our plate. So definitely a day-to-day conversation happening on that.
Other comments or questions on this item? Backing up to the AC situation, I assume that once you said we have a few minor leaks that we're dealing with.
Yep.
I assume that once that is done, we're taking care of ceiling tiles also and anything that may have been damaged by those leaks?
Absolutely. So about 2 weeks ago, there were teams walking the buildings, marking ceilings with, you can walk up and see little pieces of tape. That's just coordination between the HVAC contractor, the carpenter, LPS staff, understanding that that's the area that'll come out. It's gonna come out strategically before the contractors go in to replace the unit, and then we'll know exactly. We brought the whole team back into this building as well and walked every room to understand the sizes, and they're going right back behind them. So it's already being coordinated with all the members involved.
Okay.
Yep.
And I assume that you folks are aware of all of those at this point, but if any, occasionally we have a staff member who will mention, oh, XYZ is going on in my room. We direct them to their building principal. And I assume that that's who they should go to if there's any issue on anything.
Yep, they talk to their building principal and their building supervisor, and that generates a work service ticket. So we have not only documentation of that, but then Harry and Carl can coordinate that and see if that's something they're already aware of or where they are in that process. And then if it's something related to this work, we're also, relating this back to our historical knowledge of capturing all these issues that we've had in the past. So, and some will be normal maintenance things moving forward that we'll have in regards to HVAC. But yes, we have a pretty nice process and Mr. Francis really educated the staff on that process the last couple of years of, instead of just hearing about it, going through this work ticket process, service ticket process.
Yep.
Exactly.
Then we have a record, we know when the loop has been closed,
Yep.
and that's really important.
Right, so again, if folks do have an issue, just being unhappy about it isn't gonna take care of it. But
Right.
let your building principal or your building supervisor know about it so that it can get handled.
Yes,
Okay, good.
absolutely.
And then, do we have an update on the books for Buchanan? I know that some of those had been damaged over the summer, and they were replaced quickly at the beginning of the year, but what's the latest with that?
Sure.
Yeah, so we did have, I believe, I want to say 2/3 of the inventory approximately were replaced, and they're on the shelves. And I know Ms. Ford and Ms. Wilson have been working with Ms. Keats to see where there's any other gaps. We also have a claim that's out there for the damage that was done, and we're waiting to hear back from our the company that we filed that claim with on that damage, so.
And they're actually getting another delivery this week.
Okay, good.
And they'll have more, they're going to go through that and then let us know if there's anything additional. We've spent over $100,000 in replacing books, and so in addition to very robust classroom libraries, there are hundreds and hundreds and
They're doing
hundreds of
well.
books in,
Okay, good.
in the Buchanan Library, and the students are absolutely thrilled checking out brand-new books across the library. Many of those same titles, some they chose to do more of others that are more popular, which was just a nice coincidence that we were able to do that. But they do have another delivery coming, and then we ask them to let us know if they feel like that's sufficient, and if not, we will continue. But I want to really acknowledge Mrs. Wilson and Mrs. Ford's efforts, and Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Keats, because there was an immediate response. There was an immediate response working with Follett. Those books aren't books you can just pick up through Amazon. They have to be coded, they have to be barcoded, and they have to be properly prepared to be able to go through and be part of the checkout system. And that was truly done in record time. So in the meantime, students had access to all of the books in each of the classroom libraries as well.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions? No? All righty. Thank you for that update. Those are really helpful to.
Absolutely.
All right, the next item is 3D, sorry about that. The next item on our agenda is item 3D, roofing recommendations from the sinking fund.
Okay, well, welcome again, Brian. Colin Frank, who is, not Frank, I accidentally sent him an email always to Colin Frank, and there's no Colin Frank in the world that works with us
No.
that I know of. But Colin Frank is unfortunately unable to be here this evening. He manages most of our sinking fund projects, from the paving and the roofing, and he's done just an outstanding job securing bids on our roofing projects for this upcoming summer. So we're bringing to you that recommendation this evening for our summer 2026 sinking fund roofing projects. These will be happening at Buchanan, Hoover, Cooper, and the Franklin High School competition gym. I'm going to have Brian highlight a little bit of the process that was undertaken for finding the lowest responsible bidders, because you'll see in your packet that we did pass over one low bidder because we had a great review by our TA, our Roofing Technology Associates, for the why in that. And I'll turn it over to Brian to give you the rest of the story.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Yep, so to summarize, we had a great bid day. We had 7 different firms propose on this
Great.
project. There's 4 different sites, as was mentioned. So Buchanan Elementary School is a full replacement. They're gonna be removing all the existing roofing membrane insulation at the entire footprint of the building and replacing with new insulation, new roofing. That's also same for Cooper and Hoover Elementary, full replacement across the whole building. Franklin High School, as mentioned, is just the area above the performance gym, and then a couple surrounding roofs adjacent to it. Those were identified, it was identified by the district. Mr. Roberts and his team had concerns with how many maintenance tickets were happening above the gym. Obviously with the floor below, it's a high priced item below there. So wanted to expedite that, so we did pull that one ahead. The roof at Stevenson High School is still under warranty, so we were able to review that, found the warranty, that was not necessary. And then Churchill's performance gym was replaced last summer. So with this one, we'll have all 3 competitive gyms replaced in the district after this coming summer. So yeah, great day, bid coverage. We had 7 different firms. We are gonna be recommending a mix between Royal and Lutz Roofing, who have both been in the district, performed very well throughout. Our pricing was phenomenal. We came in with pre-COVID pricing from a square foot basis. So you'll see on page 3 of our packet that we're $862,000 under budget on our program. So everything we've been forecasting, it's great news from what we saw. As alluded to by Mr. Green, there was one firm at Cooper Elementary. They did come in as a low price, but based on the due diligence and the post-bid, a firm that has provided a few references, another K-12. Our concern was, 1, the amount of manpower they had available. It's a smaller company. And then 2, the references they gave on the other schools just weren't the size and complexity of what we were seeing at Cooper. So based on what we've seen on a production rate from previous summers, we have all that data aggregated. There was just concern there that the first one in the district, we have not worked with them yet. RTA had done a little bit of work with them, but there was just overall concern that they were gonna be cutting it too tight. Explained it to them. We've already had communication with them. They understood. Willing to bid later if there's something where we can get a smaller smaller scope to them, absolutely consider it. It was just, these are complex buildings this summer, and we just want to be sure that between Lutz and Royal, we've had proven performers that was the route that the team agreed on.
One of the things that was great about Lutz Roofing was that Colin really made it clear that I need 3 crews. I can't have you doing one building with a crew, finishing up, doing another building, and then finishing up. So he got that in writing, and that agreement that they were going to have those 3 crews out there is key, because we're on tight timelines for these projects.
Yep. So overall, Royal Roofing is getting recommended at Franklin High School, and then Lutz Roofing is being recommended for Buchanan, Cooper, and Hoover. And as mentioned, Lutz would have a crew for each one of those buildings dedicated. And then last one, zooming out a little bit, just a perspective. We've been involved, I've been personally involved since 2018 on the sinking fund. These are now 21 different roofing sites touched since 2018, totaling about $33 million of awarded money. So we sit up here and kind of lose it in the weeds and talking about full replacement. You zoom out, since 2018, it's a monumental amount of work that's been taken care of over this program. So very beneficial and great for the district, and understanding that there's been a lot of work there that you kind of lose sight of every time you come here and show one piece, a couple $1 million at a time. That it's been a game changer for the community and the district.
I appreciate you pointing that out, Mr. Weber, because it really does underscore the necessity of our sinking fund. We would have to do the roofs, right? We know when the leaking is happening, when it is reached its useful, at the end of its useful life, they have to be repaired. And so when you think about $31 million over the past, not even 10 years, 7 years, those dollars would have had to come out of the classroom. They would have had to come out of the general fund in order to pay for that. So, once again, we acknowledge the support of our community over and over, but this is a really tangible example of something that isn't a nice to have. This is a must-have. And so if we did not have the dollars through the sinking fund to be able to do this, we would have to find that source elsewhere.
Comments or questions on the roofing situation? This is one example too that, we've said it before from this table several times, and I'll say it again now, how appreciative we are for having Plant Moran with us as partners and as owners reps on this project. You were the ones who were able to tell us when costs go up, and going through COVID, a lot of costs went way up. You were the ones that were able to tell us this one had gone too high, and we had to pull back, and we had to wait for a couple of years until things calmed down a bit. That's just one example of many that we have so much more than gotten our money's worth out of having you hired as our owner's representative to walk through this whole process. Because we know education well, but we're not construction experts, and you folks are. But the roofing, whenever you say roofing, it reminds me again how grateful we are that you folks are our owner's rep.
Well, thank you for that. And once I say, it's a team effort to understand the quick decisions and understand the buy-in from the district, not only from the school board, but administrative. It's a great partnership, but it's a two-way street that, yes, we can provide data, and you guys have to understand and prioritize, and it's been a good working relationship, but absolutely been a great program for the district and very, very successful, so.
Absolutely. Yep. Alrighty, any other comments, questions on the roofing? No? Alrighty, the last item under operations is item 3E. Oh, I'm sorry, are we?
Yes, Ms. Burton, I forgot to let you know that on 3A and 3D, and coming up on 3E, those will need to be voting items for next week.
Okay, A, B, and E, you said?
A, D, and E.
A, D, E.
A, D, and E.
Okay.
Thank you, sorry about that.
Do we have that, Mrs. Acosta?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, A, D, E. Alrighty, the last item under operations is item 3E, the purchase of IT Chromebooks for the
Okay.
bond.
Chromebooks are the device. We talked about that last week, and as you saw in Mr. Weber's presentation on technology and bond replacement money, not only does our community support us with sinking fund money and bond money to make our facilities look great, help them just flourish, we also have support through this bond for a replacement for technology. And so Mr. Klan and his ID department do an analysis each and every year, and before you tonight will be a proposal to refresh our Chromebook inventory in our buildings with a purchase of 5,000 new Chromebooks. And these devices will be given to buildings to replace aging units. Mr. Klan's department works with his team to decide which units need to be replaced, and so there's not a finite number for one building. It's not the same in each building. It's based on the age of those units. Those units are then brought back and recycled, and we have a company you'll see in your packet tonight that helps us with that deployment and with that recycling of those units. And so we're going to be asking you to vote on this next week for people-driven technology to support the purchase of 5,000 Chromebooks, and also to support All Covered for our configuration services. And they do a lot of the background things. Deployment covers things from unboxing and putting asset tags on each device, unpacking them, putting them in our management system, and setting up the devices in our management system. It's quite an endeavor. 5,000 is quite a few machines, and so they also handle those old devices and provide them to our recycler as part of this process as well. So this is something that we do each and every year, and it's a real need out there. We talked last week at study session. There are other platforms we do use across the district, but those are very rare. Those would be in our Career Technical Center, some courses that require a Windows-based system perhaps, or a Apple system that would not integrate well with the Chromebooks. But a majority of our curriculum and our student usage is on these Chromebooks, and kids do a great job and teachers do a great job teaching them how to use them respectfully, responsibly, but they still get worn down pretty quick. And this cycle is primarily going to be replacing, believe it or not, our 2020 models. Can you believe that, how fast time goes? And so here we go again. So we're going to be bringing this next week for a vote, and we'd ask you to review this packet and support this next week.
Okay. Mrs. Bradford?
Yeah, just a question on so they have the Chromebooks and the carts. Do students, are they allowed to take those home?
Typically not.
Okay.
Typically not. A few years ago, we had a grant that provided Chromebooks for a lot of our students across the district. I'm not going to say that they don't take them home, but one of the measures that we do know is we have our LineWise software, our management software that protects students from internet filtering, and most of those are coming from after hours. They're coming from either them logging into their own Google account on their own devices. We don't really ever get tracked on our own devices on those. So that's one metric that tells me they're staying at school. They're back in their carts. They have the carts set up. They have them identified. Teachers do a pretty nice job of having that be the process. Now, I know districts do different things, and it's funny you asked that question, because that was my first question I asked Mr. Klan today. I said, one-to-one versus the way we do it in Livonia, which is actually a little bit more than one-to-one. What are you hearing out there? And he was at a conference this fall, and quite honestly, the districts that give each student a Chromebook wish they would have done it like we do it, because they just last longer, and they
That's
hold
what I
up
was thinking of.
longer.
I mean, the lifespan of it, once you give it to a young person.
That traveling back and
yeah.
forth puts a lot of wear on them. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mrs. Frank?
Just what is so I originally thought that the service was for like service of the Chromebooks. Who provides the service? Is that our IT department?
Our IT department does a lot of that work,
Okay.
yes. So when there's tickets that are, something breaks, they're the ones that go out there. But for deployment and for collection, we do need a third party to help us with that, or else it would take too long to get those devices out to there. So that's why you see the part for the other company to come in and help out with that work.
Okay.
And their services, our service techs, as a reminder, are broken up by triads too, which is a great model.
Okay. Our IT service.
And that the service that we're paying for also, that also takes care of recycling, the old ones?
Yep, they work with a vendor for recycling and take care of all that. And I think, I asked Mr. Klan what, and Ms. Smith might know better, but I think it was anywhere from like $9 to $13. Yeah. That could be wrong, it could be right. I can get more information, but you get some money for them, and it gets put back out there for use for someone else too, which is
Good.
nice, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Mrs. Jarvis?
Thank you. One of the things that this is a great example of is how our district has incorporated a cyclical approach. We do it with the buses, we do it with the roofs, and now we do it with the computers as well. When we first started having computers available for the students to use, people were asking why we weren't doing one-to-one. And in smaller districts, that might work. But when you've got 14,000 kids, that's a lot of computers. And I just want to stress that even when we did not have one-to-one computers, where we didn't have every student having their own Chromebook, for example, we always had 100% of the need addressed. Because we never had a time when we had 100% of the children using all computers at that time. So while we didn't have 13,000 computers, we always were able to have a computer for every child who needed one, whether it was in the school or during the pandemic, a lot of those went home. So this is, it's not new for us to have computers available, but just we've always been able to meet the need for our students. The other nice thing about doing this on a cyclical basis is that it helps us keep up with technological changes. We will never have computers that are so old that they're not compatible with the modern technology. And that way we're always fresh. And some of the computers are going to be a little newer than others, but they will all work and they'll all be compatible. And that's especially important because we are a Google district. We use Google Suites, and the Chromebooks are compatible with Google Suites. So we have a very robust system for staying technologically current, as well as meeting the need of all of our students for the Chromebooks. Great work, good design. As you said, this is a very solid program. Love to see it continue this way.
Thank you, and our techs are excited because with the new universal charging method, we don't have to rewire our carts anymore like we used to have to do in the past. So that's really nice. They can just focus on the devices only, so that's really a big win. Thank you.
Other questions or comments on this? Mr. Green, you mentioned a few moments ago, during COVID, we did have a grant that helped out some of our students who needed a device at home, who didn't have access to one. By now, those are becoming close to, if not obsolete. Do we have that need still that's not met? Is there a way that we can meet that need if we have it? Where do we stand with that now? Because we gave away, I know, a good number of them through that grant. And I know we had access to even more, that we got to the point where we took care of all of our need and then had some extras we sent back. But where are we today?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I can only tell you from my experience is that 12 years ago, when I was at, I would say, one of the most at-risk districts, buildings in the district, I did an inventory of who has technology at home. The assumption would be it was a very low percentage. It wasn't a low percentage. It was a very high percentage of who had access to computers. I think our Mr. Etu and Ms. Keats would argue that when you see a digital divide, though, our staff figure out a solution. So like when there is a digital divide that they become aware of, we try to work with families on those issues. But I am not aware of any new grant money that would be for a similar initiative at this time. But I do know that our buildings, as a former principal, we do try to work with families. Homework is not as big of a thing at elementary as it is at secondary, but I know they do try to make those efforts when we're aware of such a need. But I will tell you, Ms. Jarvis, you're exactly right. We figured out a lot of rotational schedules back in the day of making sure everybody had the device when they needed it, and we're in a great spot right now on that. So,
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Questions or comments? No? All right, and then this will be on the agenda
Yes,
for a vote
please.
next
Thank
week
you.
also. All right, that concludes the Operations Committee.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you both.
Thank you. Have a
You
good
too.
evening.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks,
Yep.
Ms. Weber.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. All right, we're going to move on to item 4, the Finance Committee, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, President Bradford. We have, I believe, 3 items tonight that Mrs. Smith will be addressing for us. And first one is the budget amendment.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I passed out the budget book that I'm hoping to walk through with you, similar to what we've done in the past. This is an outline of not only our general fund, but all of the funds that support our district. So we're going to do something a little unconventional. We're going to start from the last page and work our way forward. So exactly. So starting with these support funds, we're going to end with the general fund. So these ones are more straightforward updates. Emily has pulled up for us the budget book, so folks at home and in the audience can follow along. The 2 listed on this page are our scholarship fund and school activities fund. So with the scholarship fund, we've received donations to issue scholarships generally to graduating seniors. So this is money that we're holding for them. It is restricted funds. And what I've done here is simply updated the beginning fund balance and kept revenue and expenditure projections the same. And that would be similar case with school activities funds. These are funds that are generally raised in the school, and they're for the support of our students. And we, again, are being the holders of these funds for those activities. And what I've done here is updated the beginning fund balance and kept revenue and expenditures the same. Moving on to the next page in our book, or again, excuse me.
Quick question,
Yeah.
on that scholarship fund, and I appreciate you letting everyone know, again, that these are donated dollars,
Yep.
not LTS dollars. We had a beginning balance, we had donations and scholarships that equaled each other going in, going out. And we still have that ending balance. Is that not funds, are those funds expended every year?
They are, and you can see like last year, revenue was down. The first column is what was actually received. We received 8,100, so a little less than usual. But because we have that fund balance, we were able to issue more scholarships than the $8,100 that was collected that year, because we do hold it from year to year for those purposes. So I don't know that I answered your question though, Colleen.
So do we keep a balance in that account?
We do. Generally, so that is not new for us. It's generally in terms of the rest of our budget, it's not a very large fund balance.
No,
but-
it's not, but,
Yeah.
but there is a balance there.
Yeah.
I just kind of assumed that whatever came in went out that same year.
Yep.
And but there is a
Some
small
of it
balance.
started with larger seed money to
Yep.
begin with.
Okay.
And then, so let's say that initially $30,000 was put in, and they may spend $2,000 or $3,000 a year. So they continue to send us money to add into that, but a good
Okay.
portion of the seed money for at least one of those scholarships is still there.
Okay, that's what that is then. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yep. If there are no other questions, I'll move to the next page. If you ever too would like to see a breakdown of what are the scholarships that we're currently operating, I know one that's been around for a very long time is this Carly Scholarship. That's still something that we receive a donation for every single year. One of the newer ones, we had the passing of a staff member at Churchill, Angie Hillman, and donations came in to Ms. Oquist's point. A large amount came in at once, and we're still getting some residual money every year, but that's a balance we're holding, and then those scholarships are issued each year. So, yep. On our next page is the Food Service Fund and the Health and Welfare Fund. Not too much a change with the Food Service Fund. I've updated the beginning fund balance, and we have a few minor changes to the revenue and expenditures. Similarly, with Health and Welfare Fund, I have updated the beginning fund balance. I did want to make note on here, something that is on our radar that we're watching closely is an update to PA 152. And if you'll recall, that is the law that passed in 2011, and that's what established a hard cap for districts. And what that is the amount that we can pay towards employees' health insurance costs. The legislators, as everybody is, experiencing, health insurance costs are going up, and we've seen that sometimes the increase to the hard cap isn't keeping up with the cost of the premium increases, and so that cost is then borne by the employees. So at the tail end of 2024, December, right at the end of the year, some bills were passed that were meant to go to the governor. It was, I believe for 2024, going to set a 7% increase for employers' contribution, and then a 3% minimum going forward. And it also had a requirement that districts would pay minimally 80% of the premium costs. Those were passed by the House and the Senate, but they were not presented to the governor, so those are still working their way through the legal system. But I do want to point out, looking at our Health and Welfare Fund, our fund balance in that fund is about $500,000. The type of change that would impact us if that legislation does get passed or get signed by the governor would be huge. It's millions of dollars, and that's not money that we have a health and welfare fund available to absorb. So that would be coming out of our general fund. So I wanted to make note of that for you. That's of course something that Ms. Oquist and I stay very abreast on, and we'll keep you updated on that as well. I will pause to say one of the reasons we keep a fund balance in our health and welfare fund is although we've switched to be not self-insured for our health insurance. We work with Mesa. We still are self-insured for workers' compensation. And so we buy a policy so that if a claim were to exceed a certain dollar amount, we do have an insurance policy that will kick in, but the first portion of a claim would be absorbed by the district. And so for that purpose, we want to keep a fund balance there that could withstand a large claim. So that's the reason for a fund balance there. I'll pause. If there's no questions on that page, we'll move on to the next. Okay. On our next page, we have the sinking fund and capital projects fund, and we just talked about sinking fund under our building and site. We're very fortunate to have a sinking fund. I've updated the beginning fund balance and keeping local revenue projected to be the same. Local revenue would be the taxes we collect from the taxpayers here in our boundaries, and then I've updated the state revenue. We've gotten a reimbursement of $261,000, so slightly more than what I had included in our proposed budget, and I've left expenditures the same. For capital projects fund, this is a fund that was established to house some sales of property, so we do recognize when we're fortunate enough to come into one-time revenues. We don't want to build an ongoing annual budget based on one-time revenues, and we also recognize that we have a number of facility needs across our district, so we're always looking for ways to support those facility needs. So that's what prompted the creation of this capital funds project. It's primarily funded through sale of property, and then on occasion when we're in a position to be able to do a transfer from other funds. So we don't currently have anything budgeted for transfer from other funds, but what is included in this amendment is proceeds from the sale of property. $100,000 is, I'll say, miscellaneous sales of excess property we have throughout the district. This could be maybe maintenance equipment that we no longer need. This could be the sale, furniture, sale of buses. But what also has been included is the sale of a property off of Hicks, which we have talked about in previous study sessions. So the district is in possession. We own some woodlands not too far from Johnson, and we were approached by a nonprofit, a conservation group that was interested in purchasing that purchasing that land from the district to make sure that it continues to remain wetlands. So fresh off the presses, we have a purchase agreement that just came to us earlier today, and with your permission, we would love to bring it to you next week for your consideration. We did have it evaluated by our broker who gave us a value for the property, and we were happy to, we shared that, and they come in with an offer that's very much in line with the market value. So wonderful news. You know, as I've shared, we've got lots of needs across the district, so this one-time revenue will be put to good use.
So we just want to pause there for a moment because this was not initially included on next week's agenda. However, we have talked about this property before. This is the group who was going through Ducks Unlimited to garner a grant. That has been quite a process for them. They now have secured those funds. It is in line with the valuation that Mr. Bowman had given us. So we were very pleased to receive that today to be able to ask you, because we have discussed it at a prior study session, if we can go ahead and put that on. One, we've reflected it to be in the amended budget, but also to have it on to accept the purchase agreement next week, if that's okay with you.
Is everybody in agreement with that? Yeah,
Yes.
that's great.
Okay,
Wow,
great.
That's wonderful news.
And just, Mark,
Yes,
ju-
Mrs. Burton.
just so the folks at home know, this is a piece of property that is deemed never able to be utilized for homes or schools or such. It's too much
Correct.
of a swampy wetland.
It is.
That's correct.
It is.
So this is.
And
this
it
is
does
a
abut
win-win.
to the Holiday Park Reserve, I believe it's called. So it's right adjacent with other, yes, exactly. So
Off of
it's,
Hicks.
yeah.
Yep, terrific, thank you.
Did you have a question, Mrs. Jarvis? Okay.
It is actually a property we've had for years and years and years, and as you said, Mrs. Burton, thank you for pointing that out. This was not a developable property, and so to have a conservation group come forward and say, we would like to ensure that it remains an area as it does now, and be able to do that through grant funds, we thought really was a win-win all the way around.
Can I just ask, how big is the property again? One more?
Yes, it's 10.45 acres.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
thank you.
And the name you'll see on the purchase agreement is Friends of the Rouge
And as Ms. Oquist shared, they're working with the Ducks Unlimited group for funding. I'll move on to the next page, if there's no questions there. The next page is a reflection of our 2023 bond as well as our 2025 bond. These are both series that were approved by voters through the 2021 bond initiative that was put out to our community. I was hopeful that the 2023 bond would be all used up by June 30th. We didn't use all of it by June 30th, so we just have some residual money that we have available to use this year. And we're close to having spent it all, but we will definitely have it all used by the end of this June. So in this amendment, I'm reflecting what we had as of June 30th and then what we'll plan to spend for the rest of this year. Similar with 2025, I've updated the fund balance and also updated the interest income. It's wonderful to see that we still are able to invest these funds. We're currently investing through MyLaugh and seeing a nice return on that. So I've reflected a projected interest income of $1.1 million for our 2025 bond. Moving on to our next, very much in line with bond. When you issue bond, then we have debt that needs to be repaid. So this is our debt fund, and we reflect the different outstanding bonds in this fund. I've updated the beginning fund balance, and the revenue and expenditures have stayed the same. The nice thing about this bond is it's very predictable, the bond fund. The debt fund is because you know exactly what is due in the coming year. So that's the change on this page. Moving on to our special education fund. The special education fund is funded through the Act 18 program at the county level. So we operate 4 different programs here in our district. So we've updated the beginning fund balance here and projected revenues and expenditures. One item I did want to draw your attention to, and we'll see that in the general fund, is the transfers to other funds. Last year, we transferred $1.9 million to the general fund. That's recognition that when we operate programs, our general fund is incurring costs supporting those programs. So we get an indirect cost allocation from the county for that. They also pay us rent because we are using our facilities to house the programs. And last year we transferred $1.9 million, but we actually recovered more in indirect cost and the rent than what we transferred. So that built up our fund balance a bit. You can see that this year we started off at 2.8. So I'm proposing that we transfer funds to the general fund to bring our fund balance back to that $1 million range. There are no questions on that page. I'll move on to the next one, our funded projects fund. This is something our district has established. When we report up to the state, these are considered general fund dollars, but for tracking purposes, it's helpful to keep them in another fund. So one thing that you normally don't see is in the First Amendment, we see a negative beginning fund balance. We talked about this in October with our audit. This was just a timing issue with some of the grants where we had incurred costs. In particular, the cybersecurity grant, that was the largest one. That was $131,000. And I believe the Filter First grant was the other one where we had received, or we had expended the funds, but we didn't receive the grant funds by August 30th. Therefore, we weren't able to record them last year. So we started the year off with a negative $191,000, just in accounting terms though. And you can see we're back in balance by the end of the school year, back to a 0. A couple grants I wanted to point out. Under the state section, we have a number of grants. One is about maybe 5 down, the Section 27L2 educator compensation. The total amount is $1.9 million. And we touched upon this last week. So this was a new categorical. It wasn't discussed before June 30th, before we adopted our budget. And this was passed by the legislators. And the purpose of the funds is to increase compensation for employees in the district. And it's very specific that this can't go towards covering costs that we bargained during our negotiations. This has to be above and beyond. And it also has to be negotiated with our collective bargaining agreement, or with our collective bargaining units. What we talked about last week, and I believe we had support from the board for, in the legislation, they made it clear that this is for employees covered by collective bargaining agreements. We do have employees in our district, though, not covered by collective bargaining agreements. Largely our child care and preschool, some of the staff at Early Childhood Center, as well as staff here at the central office, staff in HR, finance, some in IT. And we thought, what a message to send to our employees to only give some, this money and not all. So we had proposed last week, and we're seeking your feedback on, can we set aside some general fund dollars so that whatever we do for employees covered by collective bargaining agreement, we can do the same thing for all employees? And we were very grateful to hear that you supported that notion. So we've included that in the general fund budget for your consideration, and I wanted to make note of that for not only the board, but for our community to say we want to recognize all our staff. So I think that'll be very well received. Next line item I wanted to point out is our Section 31A at-risk grant. We saw a nice bump in that grant from the last year. We're up to $7 million. So we had a new allocation this year as well as some carryover from last year. So I wanted to make mention of that. The next one down right under that is our Section 31AA per pupil mental health. We've spent a lot of time on this. I know the board is very familiar with this, and maybe for the community that isn't as familiar, this is one of the newer categoricals that the state has given school districts to address mental health needs and school safety concerns. This year, though, they put some additional requirements that districts had to agree to that, to be honest, aren't in our best interest. Waiving waiving our client privilege.
Attorney-client.
Thank you. Attorney-client privilege was one of those things that had to be opted into. So we have budgeted. This has gone to the courts, and we're hoping for a favorable outcome. We've said that isn't right, and we're again hoping that the courts will side in our favor. So we have included this in the budget. If the courts don't side with us, we've gotten the direction from the board that you are comfortable with us opting out of that funding, and if that's the case, we will do a future budget amendment to reflect that. So wanted to make note of that. One other one that I wanted to make mention of under state is towards the bottom. It's that Section 74B Clean School Bus Grant. We received $170,000 last year to put towards new school buses. Currently, we haven't included anything, but I did want to mention that we have applied to receive additional funds this year. So we're hopeful to hear back from the state soon, and we'll keep you posted on that. Those are, I'll say, the big standouts from our grant fund. So that'll move us on to our general fund. And first, we'll start with our general fund expenditures. This was quite a year. We got the budget very late from the legislators in October, so of course the board had to adopt a budget back in June before a lot of factors were known. Things included in our proposed budgets were settlements with all of our bargaining groups. We also had projected what retirement savings we would have, and that's from staff members retiring and then being generally replaced with new staff that might be lower on the salary schedule than the folks that they're replacing. We also had included hard cap increase estimates. That information I don't believe was known at the time. So I'm happy to point out in our general fund expenditures that our fund balance still remains in that 15% target zone, so that's great. What has been updated, we've updated it with actual staffing levels and their potential or estimated cost. We've also updated it with the known grants. Now that we've been awarded grants, we charge the staff to the grants if possible. So we've reflected that here in the general fund. And another one is one of the Section 147C1s, and I will be so happy if we ever say goodbye to that and they cut the district out of it. It's kind of a pain, and I hate how it adjusts our budget. So that is one that the legislators created to help pay down the MIPSers, the state pension system. But instead of the money going directly to the pension system, they flow that money through the school district, and then we have to record it as revenue, and then we also have to adjust our expenditures to reflect it as a cost too. So this year we're receiving $17 million. So I just feel like that, like it just messes the budget up. Like you don't, if you were to look at this and say, really, your expenses increased by that much from year to year, yes, because of this different funding source. Those aren't true increases that the district has agreed to. These are pass-through things. So, so this budget amendment does reflect that on this page, and kind of in tandem, just because it's so large and we have the general fund over 2 pages. The other page of the general fund is on the page right before it, and that's the revenues. In revenues, slightly down from what we had included in the proposed budget. We had originally estimated $188 million of revenue, and we're closer to $185 million of revenue. A couple items of note. First, in the local revenue, you can see we're down about, call that 400,000. Is a decrease in the interest earned. While we're still seeing really healthy interest earned, we are seeing that start to slow down a little bit, so I've reflected that. And also lease revenue. As you know, one of our leasees did not renew, so I've adjusted our budget to reflect that loss of lease revenue. On the state side, so many different categoricals, the state has eliminated 4 of the Section 147 categoricals. Some of those were reflected in our proposed budget, and some of them are being adjusted here to reflect that they are no longer included in the budget. Another one that was included in our proposed budget was the elimination of the Section 20F hold harmless. If you recall, we've been receiving that money for quite a long time, and the state phased that out over 2 years. So we saw a $400,000 decrease last year, and then this year another $400,000 decrease with the elimination of that categorical. We've got a couple new, or I should say an increase to Section 147C1. We received an additional $5 million. That's that pass-through money, so that's reflected on here. We also have a new categorical, retirement related, but it doesn't fall under that 147 category. It's called 27L4, and it's MIPSR's Healthcare, and that was $1.7 million. So this is, we had about 50% of our employees that are opted into retiree health, what would you call that, a benefit. And employees used to pay 3% towards that retiree benefit, and it was eliminated from the employees and it was shifted over to the employer. So this is some revenue to help recognize that increase in retirement costs for the district. So this is something we'll watch closely. It's always, in my opinion, a little scary when they put it through a categorical, because just as they've eliminated other categoricals, they can eliminate this one next year and it's gone, but that retirement cost that they've established for us will not change, is my guess. So again, something we'll follow very closely. The other item I wanted to point out on here is the other financing sources. As I mentioned, I'm proposing a larger increase from the center program this year, and also a larger increase from our food service fund to help capture those indirect costs we're incurring in the general fund. So that felt like a whirlwind. But again, I know these are things that we discuss rather often, and I know the board's very familiar with the budget. I'm happy to flip to any pages if there's any particular questions that you have. But again, good news for our community. I'm happy to report, again, still strong performance, and very happy to see our fund balance still at that 15% range.
Any questions? No questions? I know there's a lot of work that goes into this.
It is.
And we appreciate every amendment that we get. It really helps us understand what's going on.
Good.
So thank you. Okay. Then we will move on to item B, summer tax resolution.
Perfect. And this one is one you are definitely very familiar with. As you know, we levy our taxes 50% in the summer and 50% in the winter, and I'm recommending that we continue with that practice. So with your permission, we'll put that on the agenda for next week. I did want to mention, last year it was on consent agenda, and if it's...
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Sounds like the board is supportive of that, staying on the consent agenda.
Very good. Any questions? All right, then we'll go on to item C, refunding of prior bonds.
Perfect. Last but not least, some exciting news.
Yeah.
This is what I would equate to, like the outcome is similar to when you refinance your home, when you can secure lower interest costs and have some savings. We have an opportunity to save some money. We're thinking that it might be in the neighborhood of about $7 million after the cost of refunding. So $7 million of interest costs. So when we do issue bonds, we have to pay interest to go along with those bond payments. So this would be saving $7 million of currently outstanding bonds. And this is specifically for the second series that we sold in 2016 from our 2013 bond. It had a provision in it that at the 10-year mark we could refund these, and the market conditions are so where it would be beneficial for us to do so. So I've been working closely along with Andrea with a few of our partners that help ensure that we're doing right by our community. PFM is our financial advisor. They're looking at the market and, recommending that we explore this option. We're also working with True and our bond counsel, who's prepared a resolution that, with your approval, we'll bring forward for next week that would authorize us to go down this path. And then we're also working with JP Chase, who has been an underwriter of ours for a number of years. As a national company, they have access to so many large, diverse investors that they do a wonderful job placing our bonds and selling the bonds. Each one plays a pivotal role in the process. JP Morgan, obviously, working directly with investors to build up interest to purchase our bonds. And then PFM, making sure that the interest rates that we secure are in line with the market and that we're getting a good rate. And of course, then Troon to make sure that we're doing everything by the law as it needs to be done. So it's my recommendation that we do move forward with that. I think this is definitely good news, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions, comments? And this will go on the regular.
Yes, with
I think
your,
it's important that you explain.
that?
Yes, we share
Wonderful.
the information with the community, so.
Absolutely.
And if I am not mistaken, we will also, you and I will also go through the process of being reevaluated with regard to our bond rating, correct?
Yep.
So our last bond rating was an A+, which was the second increase that we've had in the past 7 years. And so we will once again go through that process, and that is important information for potential investors.
Great. All right,
Mr. Johnson?
yes.
Mrs. Oquist, I assume A+ is the highest rating that we can get, or is that not?
I think
It is
you
actually
can-
not. You can
Yeah.
get
You
an
can
A++,
go plus.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
believe an A+++.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
So, yes,
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
All right.
We do very well though, and compared, we've talked about this before when we
Absolutely.
sell bonds and do you try to get on with the state, but we've got a very strong credit rating ourselves, so that's good news.
Yeah, we had extensive interest the last time.
Yep.
We sold the Series 3 bonds, and I believe we had over
Yep.
triple the number of requests that, compared to what we had to sell,
Yep.
so.
Yep.
Amazing. Okay,
Wonderful. Well, thank you.
no further questions, then I will turn it back over, President Bradford, as we are done with the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith, and thank you, Mr. Johnson. Moving on to item 5, the Division of Instruction Committee. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Acosta.
Thank you, President Bradford. And we just have one item, a very important item this evening, our index scores with Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. Good evening. How are you?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then one more document, it's just gonna go all the way around the circle.
Okay.
And we'll give them an
You bet.
overview.
There we go.
So I am very excited to share with you one of 2 accountability measures the state of Michigan has for public schools. The index rating score is something that is in place for every school in the state of Michigan, so it is not a district accountability. It is strictly based on an individual school's scores and their data. I have a little bit longer of a sheet of paper to, thank you, explain to you what the index scores mean. So each year I bring this, you have a packet of all of the schools in Livonia. The Career Technical Center, they only had 20 Northfield children's scores in their index scores because our student scores go to their high school. So I didn't send that to you because the data was very wonky. Mr. Casada is looking into that. We typically don't have kids identified twice for a building, and the Career Technical Center is a program. It's not, a full school. And yet Webster is a school, a program, but it is also a school. So it's just making sure we're reporting the data correctly in the Career Technical Center. Their students' scores are at their individual high schools, and then Northville's because it was 2 different districts. We had 20 kids that were tagged for the Career Technical Center, so we did not keep that. So each school has a dashboard. The dashboard has 8 different areas. The main area, well, the first top left is just their overall score out of 100 points, which is a cumulative of the other scores. Then to the right of the top, it's whether they are identified as needing support from the state of Michigan. We do not have any schools that have been identified as needing support. So it says universal support, that's what everyone gets, unless you have an area where you're in the bottom, you have a subgroup or one of these data areas where you are in the bottom 10% of the state. So we haven't in the last, a good long time, had any of our schools identified. So every single one of our schools, so when I bring back your annual education report, our other accountability, each one of those schools will say universal support because we don't have anyone who's targeted and no one who's comprehensive. And so each year there are schools that are identified for targeted support and every 3 years for comprehensive. And again, comprehensive 3-year just ended and none of our schools were identified for the next 3 years. So it could be a year if someone's scores or their data specifically went down significantly when you look at our scores, but I don't anticipate that happening. So then in the green, there's a growth index. So each school gets a growth score. Our K4's growth score is just strictly based on 4th grade state assessment results because 3rd graders are the first year they take it. So when you look at that growth score, it's our state assessments 4 through 8 and 11th grade. So any students who attended a full academic year in your district, their score gets added to that growth index. And then the performance of all subgroups that have 30 students or more.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
In the, now I lost my train of thought. It'll come to me.
Okay. Then to the right of that, the blue bar graph one is the proficiency index. So that is based on that school's MSTEP scores or PSAT, SAT scores. Again, it only includes the number of students who attended the full year and any subgroup scores for 30 or more at that school, not in the district. So the proficiency portion that goes into the overall index is worth 29% of the overall score. The growth is worth 34%. So again, you could not be doing as well proficiently, but if you're continuing to grow, you'll get more points for that on the index score. Then graduation rates. So that area is only for our high schools. It does have a 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year graduation rate for our students. So when you look at our secondary schools, those are there. The English Language Progress Index, again, is based on having 30 or more students at your school and their WIDA scores and also their participation in state assessments is a part of that. So a lot of our schools do not have a score there. In any area, so that particular part is 10%, the graduation rate is 10%. They break that up into the areas that are left for an individual school. So a K4 would never, that 10% for graduation rate is already broken up then to proficiency and growth, school quality, and student success, and then assessment participation. So they take that piece. It's not against you. They break it back up into the other areas. The last 2 areas are the school quality and student success. So this is based on 5 subcomponents and chronic absenteeism, so the percentage of being chronically absent, schools with access to art, PE, and library media specialists, and advanced coursework and post-secondary enrollment. So all of these data pieces are data that we self-report. So they are part of our data package that we report each year. And so then we get a score for that. And then that last, the gold section is your participation in state assessments. And so you get points for making sure that you get, and the goal is always over 95% of your kids to participate, but that's, you know, that's sometimes not doable depending on a given year, but that is what we're always aiming for.
Mrs. O'Brien, with regard to the School Quality and Student Success Index,
Yes.
There are 3 areas that would impact K-6: chronic absenteeism, access to arts and physical education, and access to librarians and media specialists. I'm assuming the last 2, everyone has 100%. So for a K-6 school, the variable really is chronic absenteeism.
Yes.
Is that how I'm reading that?
Yes, because advanced coursework and post-secondary is not
Okay.
added into their score.
So it is self-reporting, but unless there's an error in the self-reporting, really the only variance would be
Correct. You
that.
are
And does
correct.
that come from the state, or do we put that in?
We report our chronic absenteeism. There's a report at the end of the school year.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Frank, you're welcome.
So are you going to go through the schools?
I was. I did.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. But I just didn't know if you had any questions now that I went over it. So,
I'll get there.
okay.
Do we chart the overall index from year to year? So we know where they go? How far back have we been doing that? Do you know?
I've been doing it since 2019.
Okay, so we got at least 6 years of,
We do.
oh,
COVID.
this is through 24, 25, right? So you
Yes,
got-
this is based on last year's assessment results. And so before I went into the schools, I just was going to give you a little overall highlight that at the K4 level, 6 schools have a higher index score than last year. 3 are within a point of last year. So they went down 100th of a point, 24 hundredths of a point, and 3 schools went down. At the 5-6, we had 1 who increased their index score, 1 that was within a point, and 1 went down. At our middle schools, we have 2 that went down and 1 that went up, but just less than a point, but still went up. And of our high schools, we are very happy to report 2 went up and 1 slightly went down. So I wanted to give you an overall summary because again, this matches our continued steady progress for the most part. When you think about some of the schools that fell a little bit and it being within a point, that's, you know, statistically very close to the same score. Okay, so they should be in alphabetical order by level. So as you can see, so Buchanan, 99.9 is their overall score. If you have any questions about an individual school's other scores, is that what you want me to do, is just go through their overall scores?
Sure. Or anything that's.
That I've noticed? So Cleveland, 91. Yes, yes.
Mrs. Burton?
I do have a question. Buchanan with the School Quality and Student Success Index being 94, if really, as Mrs. Oka said, the only variable is absenteeism, that strikes me as unusual. Is it unusual? Am I reading that correctly, or is there something more that could have gone into that score?
So that section of the score is chronic absenteeism, so it's worth 4% is chronic absenteeism, 4% access to art and PE, so they have that, and 1% access to a media specialist. An additional 5% advanced coursework and post-secondary enrollment would have been spread out because that is not a data point for K4s. So is it a question that their school quality and student success is 94? I did not dig into their chronic absenteeism and see if Buchanan's is lower than last year. that specific area, but I can.
Can you?
Sure,
It strikes me as an odd score,
sure,
if that's what's being measured.
sure.
Mrs. Frank?
So my question was, so the proficiency index,
Mm-hmm.
so that means 100% of the kids at Buchanan are proficient?
Nope.
Okay.
So that means Buchanan hit their target for proficiency that the state has set. So for the index, so I should have gone through that a little bit more clearly. So for both growth and proficiency, when I was saying that you hit the state targets and your subgroup was 30 or more, there's each individual school has a target for improvement. These were generated for the first time, I'm gonna guess somewhere like in 2017, 2016, and then they've been updated. So it says, for a given school, back what their MSTEP score was, they need to grow 4.2% every year, and they originally had put it out pretty far out. They pulled it back, because the goal at one point was 100%. And so what that says is Buchanan hit their goal for proficiency, both in their overall scores and all of their subgroups. They didn't lose any points.
You could have said that, I could have missed it, but thank you for
Oh,
clarifying.
I think it was right that you asked, so that if I didn't say it clearly, I needed to. Good? Yep. Okay, so then Cleveland is 91.1, Coolidge 98.43, Grant 93.8, Hayes 96.3, Hoover 99.4, Kennedy 97.28, Neji 99.13, Randolph 88.01, Roosevelt 98.31, Rosedale, yes, yep.
Mrs. Frank?
You probably told us this, but one more time on their growth. So you said, just general, growth index comes from, so the proficiency comes from if they hit their targets, and growth comes from?
Hitting their growth target. So at a K4, it's really one target from 3rd grade to 4th grade, because there aren't multiple years. But at a 5-6, there's a growth target for 5th grade and 6th grade, because kids have taken the test multiple years. At a K4, it's, because 3rd graders, it's their first time, there's no growth measure. So it's hitting their growth target for improvement from 3rd grade to 4th grade.
Okay.
And the state sets that
Yeah.
for
Yep.
every school.
Yeah, so when it says 100% growth, they're just hitting target. I
Correct.
mean, not just,
Yep.
it's a huge
Yep.
accomplishment.
And so that's a good balance. You can see their proficiency is 99, or we're talking about Roosevelt, right? And then their growth was 100, so they hit their growth target. Their overall index score was 98.31. So not every student at Roosevelt is proficient on the M-STEP, but we are hitting the target set for us, or Roosevelt is,
Yeah.
for their state assessment scores.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Rosedale was 90.66, Webster 99.39, and now our 5-6s. Cooper's overall index score was 87.48, Johnson's 81.93, Riley's 89.48. Our middle schools, Emerson 67.28, Frost 90.03, Holmes 90.55. Churchill's overall index score is 70.48, Franklin 68.66, and Stevenson 92.07. So a nice comparison, since we're ending on Stevenson, is their index score last year was 82.6.
Their overall?
Their overall was 82. So they not only made growth on their index score, they made strong growth. But as I have brought to you, their M-STEP math scores went up significantly because they had fallen the year before, and their ELA not as significantly. So they did some, hard work to have more students hit the SAT goal line. And so that shows then in their index scores, because then they're hitting their growth targets and their proficiency targets for this year. Does that make sense? So I thought that was a good one to end with, because that was a nice growth.
President Bradford.
So, do our center kids or programs and all kids take the P? Well, I would assume at Churchill Franklin, it's the PSAT, right, that they're looking at specifically?
So at where?
At all, like Churchill Franklin and Stevenson, their scores are based on their
SAT
SAT.
scores. But so the My Access scores count for a school that have more than 30 students who take My Access. So not many of our schools have 30 students that would take My Access.
My Access is an alternate assessment
Oh, gotcha.
from the MSTEP or
Okay.
the
Okay,
For
so
special
that- so
education
quite
students, our
frankly,
centers-
they're all included in these scoring, then they take the P.
If
They take
there's 30 students at a school, so if Franklin FTP has 30 students who take My Access,
Okay, they're
They-
not included.
they would be, if more than 30 are, then they would be included. I
Oh,
don't
I see what you're
think
saying.
any of our
Okay.
schools have more than 30 students who take My Access, and Mrs.
Gotcha.
Sproul's gonna come over and help us with that.
But also, if they're not taking My Access and they are taking the traditional state assessment, they are included in here.
Correct, so if I have a reading disability and I'm
Mm-hmm.
taking SAT with accommodations, my scores count.
I gotcha. Okay, so that's all included in
Yes.
each of the buildings. Okay.
Do we have any?
The only thing I would add to that is that if a student is on a high school diploma track, then they're taking the standard assessment. They're taking the MSTEP, they're taking the PSAT. If they're working towards a certificate of completion, those students typically take the My Access. So My
Gotcha.
Access
Okay.
scores are not reflected in this information, that's separate. At Franklin and Churchill, we do not have more than 30 students that are taking My Access because it's only specific grades. And it's, that's a very small cohort of students that are taking that alternative assessment.
Okay.
The majority of our students are taking the
State
standard
assessment.
assessment.
Absolutely.
And are included.
Yes. So
Gotcha.
according to the state, less than 1% of your total student population should take the alternative assessment.
Wow.
Less than 1%.
Wow.
So that means all of our
So-
students primarily are
Taking these
reflected.
Are reflected in the
Yes.
SAT scores. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And I was just gonna clarify, I know you keep using PSAT.
No, that's for middle school?
Yes, and
Okay.
before the 11th grade SAT.
That's, got it. Okay, thanks for clarifying that, because I keep saying PSAT, but it's PSAT at the middle school, SAT
high
at the high school at 11th grade.
We also take PSAT 9 and 10 at the high school, but it's not a state-required assessment. We actually, we keep track of that because that's a nice progression from an 8th grader to a 9th grader to 10th grader to their SAT. So do we see a growth from the first time they take an SAT-like assessment through 11th grade? So we actually use that data, but it's not a data point.
So
for
the
those.
9th and 10th graders are not included. This is in the high school, it's
Correct.
11th grade only.
Correct.
Middle school, 8th grade.
7th grade, 6, 5, 4, 3, M-STEP. So all the M-STEP assessments, PSAT, SAT,
Okay, thank you.
state required.
Mrs. Burton, you had your hand up.
Yes. Can you please explain more about what the English learner progress is? Do I assume correctly that's if we have 30 or more students who are English is their second language?
Yes.
And it is how much, what percentage of that population met their progress goal? Is that correct?
It is their progress goal on WIDA. So it is their proficiency on WIDA.
Can you tell me again what WIDA is? Sorry, forgot.
WIDA is the,
The state assessment that's given to English language learners, and it indicates the level of support that they need to reach proficiency in English.
Okay.
so if you've been identified as an English learner, you have to take it at the beginning of the school year, and it's a screener, and then they take it a second time. There's a point range scale. Our newcomers are our students who score the lowest. They're new to the country. they've been enrolled for less than a year, they score between I want to say a 2 something all the way down to a 0, so those students don't have as much English language. Then it goes from 2.0 to 2.5, 2.5 to 3.5. And so that's how we determine the number of hours our English language students get support from. So 4 is the highest, I believe, so those students get the least support, and the lower their score is, they get the most support.
Okay, so do I assume correctly then that, say they fall in the beginning category, progress would be as if they got to the next category? I mean, like that, is that a state-determined amount
Growth
of
score?
improvement in order for them to have
I can
progress?
get you what the growth score would be based on for that also,
Okay,
because I don't know that off the top of my head, and I wouldn't want to say exactly what that change
okay,
is for a student who's in secondary specifically, who's taking that WIDA test, what that growth change has been. How new are they versus a student who's been getting support for a couple years, they moved to our country 4 years ago, 3 years ago. So it definitely, there's a step up based on their score, the amount of, or step down the amount of support that they get, but I'm not sure exactly the percent for that index score, but I can find that out for you.
okay. So, it looks like our high schools have 30 or more, but it looks like our middle schools do not have 30 or more students that would fall in that category and therefore would we get a score for that category.
Yep.
Okay,
Any school that says NA does not have 30 registered students to that school.
okay. And looking at a case like this, so our English language learners are also mixed right in with our non-English language learners. And that would answer some of our proficiency numbers, is we've got some students who are taking these tests who are just learning English.
If they are within 1 year, I don't think they take the state assessment.
They
Less
take it,
than a
it's
year.
not counted.
Yes, it's taken and it's not counted.
Okay.
If they've
but-
been in the country for less than a year
Yep.
and are not a native English speaker and have very limited proficiency.
Okay, so literally for a 13-month on student, their scores count in our general scores, and if we have 30 or more in any given building, they also count it as a subgroup.
Yes,
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 that's correct.
yep.
All right,
Well
Okay.
said.
And WIDA is a nationally utilized test.
okay,
So WIDA is a test that is used across the country, and it's meant to identify the level of support a student needs as they come to the U.S.
And I would add, because my sons both had to test out, because as long as there's another language in the home that's not English, then you receive screening, and then you have to test out 2 years before. Yeah,
okay, before you're not considered as in that group any longer.
correct.
Okay, so if they're
At least
testing
that was the
proficient in
case for my
English.
sons, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
so if they test 2 years in a row of being proficient, they from that point
Don't
on,
receive
they're
any
not
services.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, and they therefore would not fall into this group then either, I would imagine, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mrs. Frank?
So my question is a little bit like that, not with the English language, but just with the high schools and their scores. So I see Emerson is lower, and we put some more supports in there, so I understand that. But Frost is extremely high, and then Churchill goes lower. So it would, I know you're not talking apples to apples. I know these are not the same kids that we've seen progressing. I understand that they're two different sets of kids, but you would assume, right, that as they go through the triad, if it's high in one school, that they're going to be higher in another school. But there seems to be a dip at high school in that triad. And so I'm just wondering if there's, if they've looked at that, or if that doesn't really, they really are only looking at their scores and not look at the continuity of the triad.
So we definitely look at our MSTEP, PSAT, SAT scores within a triad, and we look at how students grow. When I look at Frost, I remember that the MACAP program is at Frost. The percentage of those students versus the percentage of the whole would be larger than the percentage of MSC in Churchill.
Because there's 60 at Maycat and there's only 30 at Churchill.
And Churchill has 4 grade levels, so it's basically Frost and Johnson's number of students all at the high school, right? It's double Frost.
Yeah.
So then that percentage is smaller and the school is larger. So the impact of a magnet program like that is smaller than it would be at a Frost. Does that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mrs. Burton?
Similarly, the graduation rate index, for example, Franklin, as an example, it's 92.38 points. That does not necessarily mean 92.38%.
No.
When
It
you
is their
do get back
index,
with
right?
us, can you let us know
Yep,
how they?
Yep, I'll
how
make a
they-
little chart of exactly what those points.
Yeah, what are these things, yeah,
equate
what do
to.
some of these
Yep.
mean in numbers that would make a little more sense?
Yep, I definitely can do that. The math of the index scores, if you remember when we had ABC, was a lot clearer than the report card that had the ABC. The math of that, those grades were much harder. This I can show you an example that has, so it'll say graduation rate for all, graduation rate for boys, graduation rate for girls, graduation rate for economic. So again, you're hitting the target number with each group. If you miss a group, you lose some points. That affects the overall score. So again, it's each school, you can click on each one of those and you get a chart that tells you more information about how that overall score is compiled. And that's true of the growth index, the proficiency index. Again, it's like, so what percent was proficient for everybody? What was, and so if you have a subgroup that you're not proficient or aren't graduating or, you know, whichever of those, you lose points. And then that top right category of support, you could get identified that you have an area that is significantly below everyone else and you need to do something about that. We don't have that, but that doesn't mean we don't have some subgroups who aren't scoring in the same way as other subgroups. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that would be really helpful. I mean, it's not common.
I tried
We
not
need a
to
lot-
give you the 25-page guide,
Yeah.
but what I will do is I will make my own guide. Every year we do, we do talk about this, like
Right.
the math of these scores. So I'll definitely do that. So
That would be
you
really
have that.
helpful. Thank you.
So I'm hearing questions about the English Learner Progress Index, the Graduation Rate Index, and the School Quality and Student Success Index,
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Frank?
Can you just remind me, do the buildings look at this as part of their QAR, as part of their building improvement? Where are the building leaders looking at these scores?
As a part of their own school improvement, they may look at this. So because they get the same data in multiple ways, so they get their M-STEP scores, then they get their annual education scores, they have their own building data, and then this is an identified area. The expectation is leadership teams dig into that. Beyond that, they own that. So what does that mean here at whichever school? When I say we've grown 10 points on our M-STEP, but our index score doesn't really, what are we missing? So every year they dig into their subgroups scores as a part of their school improvement and say, have we closed the gap? So are girls still scoring higher than boys? What have we done to be purposeful in thinking about that? So all of those conversations are linked to this, to their M-STEP, to their school improvement plans, all of those things. This is a transparency for our parents, so it's something that goes on the MDE website. It's very similar to the dashboard. So you go to the index page and you choose your school on a map of the state of Michigan, and then it downloads. And then you can see multiple years. You can choose there up at the top what one. So each individual building principal and their leadership team are expected to be immersed in their data and have an idea of what that is.
Okay, so I was just gonna say, like, I'm encouraged by the fact that, seeing as our focus is academic achievement, that 63% is based on proficiency and growth, and that aligns with what we're looking to see as well, at the school levels, so just excited to see, the path that we're on, so thank you, Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you.
And that concludes the Division of Instruction Committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. All right, we're going to move on to item 6, the Board Policy Committee, and I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Frank, Vice President Frank.
Thank you, Ms. President Bradford. We are going to look at our truancy policy, board policy JBE, and Mrs. Keats and Mr. Etu are going to come help us out with this one. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Well, hello.
I almost just said good morning, and that would have been not correct at all. So Mr. Etu and I have been working on the truancy policy, policy JBE, and I would like to read the policy as it is very short, and I feel very confident in my abilities here. So board policy JBE, student truancy. The Livonia Public Schools School District shall report to the appropriate authorities any child who is absent from school in violation of the compulsory attendance law. And the legal references are included at the bottom. So the policy is very short because it essentially says we follow the law and period, that is the story. Now, when we talk about the administrative procedures, on the other hand, that's when it becomes far lengthier. So would you like us to read that into the record, or would you just like to review that at this time?
Let's just review it.
Okay.
I think reviewing's fine.
Okay, and
Let's
this
just
was based on the corrections we talked about at our study session last week. You will see the revisions are reflected within.
Any questions? Are you guys reading?
I do.
Oh, Mrs. Burton.
On the administrative procedures, under secondary, item B, the very last line of the whole page, we have one reference to his/her, which I believe we are changing to their.
Yes. Thank you.
Other than that, it looked great.
Okay. Any other suggestions, thoughts for JBE? Sorry, I don't have it pulled up because my computer's not working, but you were gonna look into, did you look into elementary if it is MyStar? Did you add it to MyStar?
I did add that,
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
Yes, and it's
Okay,
in
perfect.
there.
Perfect.
The contact will be logged in my Star
Okay,
Visits.
perfect, awesome. Okay, nothing else, then we will move on.
Please add it to the agenda for our next meeting next week.
Perfect, we will do so. Mrs. Acosta?
All right. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
That's it, right? Is there? And do we have to vote on that we're removing that exhibit, or no? That's not?
No, we are
We don't have
removing
to,
the exhibit,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. Not the exhibit.
The exhibit actually is not currently uploaded onto
that's right.
the website, so we believe that it has already been, gone through that process, but it still exists. We still had a copy of it, so we are going to remove it. It is not online any longer.
If it's in our physical copybook, do we need to just vote to remove it just to make certain that that has been properly done? Or do we not need to vote to remove exhibits? I think that we.
I think that's part of the
Administrative
administrative procedures,
procedure.
which we would not have to vote on.
We can follow up
You're
on that
right.
just to check.
You're right. If we don't vote, you're right.
I think it's part of
Yep.
the administrative
Yep,
procedures, so we
that's
don't have
correct.
to vote on that.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, and then moving on to board policy, DK, Student Activities Fund Management. Mrs. Smith?
Not as exciting as the last one, but still important. I took the policy that we reviewed last week together. I made the update that was suggested. I don't remember what the old word is, but we swapped it out for a shall so that we had a consistent use of it. And again, this is a policy that speaks to our student activities funds and what the expectation is for overseeing these and for timing of deposits. So that's this.
Fantastic. Any questions?
I do.
Ms. President Bradford?
So that first sentence, it says, "The Board of Education authorizes the establishment and maintenance of a student activity account."
It's hard to read. It's crossed through, but it does look like it's,
Not A.
Yeah.
A's got a strike through on it.
yep.
Thank you. Okay, gotcha. I couldn't see that.
It just looks like
so-
it could be like a,
Okay,
an
thank
Yes,
you.
a
ink
fancy,
carryover or
yes.
something like
Perfect,
that, yep.
thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else? No? Okay. That wraps up DK. We'll put that on the agenda for the board meeting. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. And President Bradford, that wraps up Board Policy Committee.
Wow, Vice President Frank, you were very efficient. Nice work.
Moving right along.
All right, item 7, the Human Resources Committee. Since Mr. McFarland is not here this evening, Mrs. Burton, would you go ahead and run that committee?
I'd be happy to. We only have one item on that, and that is 7. We only have one item, and that is item 7A, which is enrollment update, and we'll hear from Mr. Abate in just a moment.
I will also note, Mrs. Acosta and President Bradford, we will need to put on the result of the superintendent evaluation on the committee, on the personnel committee for the regular meeting,
Yes.
as a follow-up to our closed session this evening.
Yep.
Perfect.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
I will spare you going all the way back to the original report. If you'll recall, we had a session several weeks back, and there were a couple of questions, in particular about Churchill, and I had promised you an answer on that, and an update on where we ended up with the counting as we reported to the state. So let me start there, and I'll address those two things. So when last we spoke, we were looking at an FTE loss of 115. Now with all of our final reporting into the state, that is 129 rather than 115. Now, fortunately, and I just talked this over with Mrs. Smith. I saw a look of concern because Mrs. Smith is Mrs. Smith. She's very well prepared for that, and it was in the at least in the ballpark of what was expected. And in her budget amendment, she's has calculated this in and feels confident based on our conversation prior. I'll let her speak for herself when that opportunity comes. But that is where we ended up number-wise, a little bit different than we originally spoke. The other question we had was Churchill, because it looked like there was kind of a disproportionate FTE loss there. And going back through the numbers, there are two factors. One, we had a much smaller incoming 9th grade class than the outgoing senior class, which always accounts for a chunk. And in that case, there was a chunk of 40 or so, 45 or so. But then you also have a disproportionate number of students who are listed as 0 FTE from Churchill because they're enrolled in Grad Alliance. And that's a larger group than at either Franklin or at Stevenson, which then throws that overall FTE number a little bit out of whack. So you remember we saw something like in the range of like 72, and we're like, how could that possibly be? You've got kind of those two factors at play there, a much smaller incoming class than the outgoing, and more students who aren't counted in that traditional FTE count because they are enrolled in a different program in general. Doesn't mean we don't get any FTE for them, but it's calculated differently in a monthly report to the state, and then depends on their activity and the fraction of the FTE and that sort of thing. So those were the kind of the two pieces that popped out of that last presentation that we had that we wanted to make sure that we nailed back down for you. Okay. Had a lot of conversations with Chris Mazer, our people accountant. She's a wizard as well, and was like really deep in the numbers, had my head a little bit spinning as well. But I will bring back any questions that you might have to satisfy any needs that you may have related to people accounting enrollment.
Alrighty. Mrs. Frank, you had a question?
Just remind me, Grad Alliance is an alternative high school program?
Well,
Is it
right. It's credit recovery in a lot of cases.
like people who over 18, or no, not necessarily all age groups? Would we send somebody there for all age groups?
We have students who are in multiple age groups. It primarily started as a program that was available to students who had dropped out, but who wanted the opportunity to earn their diploma.
Okay.
And so Grad Alliance got them back on track, and they were generally not students they were students who were no longer enrolled in our schools. So this gave them a pathway. The parent and the student have to meet with the Director of Secondary Education in order to join Grad Alliance, get approval from the district, and then they are monitored through the Grad Alliance process. And then we are, while we gain a portion of that FTE for that student, we pay Grad Alliance a fee for that work. And so it's a very a small net number that comes to the district, but the good part of that is these are students who had dropped out and would normally not be on track to get their diploma, and so they're able to find that pathway there. So it's different than students who take 21F or Michigan virtual courses who are still part of our programming and part of our district, but they're taking virtual programs. These students are no longer part of our district, but are back on that path to earn their diploma.
Okay, makes sense.
Alrighty, any other questions or comments on this? Alrighty, thank you very much, Mr. Abate.
Yeah,
and
thanks for bringing that back.
That concludes Human Resources Committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. All right, we're going to move on to item 8, the Legislative Committee, and Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you very much, President Bradford. At this time, we have no agenda items for the Legislative Committee unless Mrs. Oakwith has an update for us.
No, Mrs. Jarvis, I do not.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, the good news is, at this point, we are at the end of our agenda. We would hope that you would join us for next Monday night for our regular meeting, which will be on December 15th at 6:30. So we bid you all a good evening. Thank you for joining us. Good night.